Hello everyone, I'm Raphael Perry and it's time to talk about what is going on with Mythic Games and what they have done with the Darkest Dungeon board game. If you know some of this, you know already. But essentially Mythic Games have got themselves into what I will politely refer to as a spot of bother. I will expand on this, quite possibly in much less polite terms, as the video continues, and have found themselves asking, yet again, for more funds to help manufacture and deliver this beautiful game to all of us who backed it. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to add a disclaimer. That I haven't quite opened all the updates I wanted to, have I? Damn it. Oh well, I'll do that as the video goes. And there we go. First swear word of the video. Right, look, I am both emotionally and financially invested in this Kickstarter campaign. I did back it, and I would like to receive the things that I pledged for. I'd like everyone to receive what they wanted, you know, what they went in for. But you know, I'm working class, I'm emotional, chances are there will be strong language. But I'm going to do my best to keep it clean. So, yeah, it's about 6 o'clock in the morning now. So last night, Mythic published this update, but I need to go back to the previous update, 125. Which will just load up for a moment. Right. Let's be honest here. Mythic Games are practically running on life support right now. They have messed up really badly. They were running a lot of campaigns just to feed earlier campaigns. They were undercharging, then discovering that they were under-delivering, running new campaigns that promised a lot to fund the delivery of the previous campaigns, and got themselves into a mess, basically, from what I can tell. Now, what makes this a little bit harder is that some of the information is spread across multiple campaigns. I backed 2 of their campaigns. I backed Hell the Last Saga, which has had no information or any sort of feedback or anything for over a year now. And I did not back the Rainbow Six Siege campaign, which is apparently where a lot of the recent information has been placed. So, previously, on the 22nd of September, so 14 days ago, so about 2 weeks ago now, they published an update about Wave 2 delivery. They decided to split the campaign into Wave 1 delivery and Wave 2 delivery. When Wave 1 was getting ready, they contacted us all and said very nicely, "Dear backers, we're afraid that shipping costs have raised," and look, I'm being very nice on their behalf, okay? They said, "Dear backers, we're afraid that shipping costs have increased since we made our original estimates. We're going to have to ask for a little bit more money to put the boxes on the boats and deliver them to the countries you live in. We would like you to pay this extra money. It is optional, and if you pay it, your boxes will be on the first ship headed towards your delivery hub of choice, you know, and if you don't pay it, we're afraid we can't guarantee when you will ever get the things you pledged for." Which is basically a threat. It's a ransom saying, "Give us all your money," right? Now, people were concerned. They came up with some money, some charges, and said, "Here you are, you pay this much." And it wasn't that much, right? It seemed like a almost reasonable amount. Now, there were still a lot of people who absolutely refused to pay it and didn't pay it, and what those of us who live in our green and pleasant land discovered over here in England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, is that there had apparently been so many of us for our country who had paid the ransom that it would need more than one ship to deliver all our goods, and in fact a second vessel had to be chartered, and this second vessel would be leaving port about 3 weeks after the first one, and that they had no way of telling us which ship our things were on. So I was sitting here counting down the days, tracking the vessel, waiting for the ship to arrive in this country. And then after about another 2 weeks after it arrived here, and the ship had clearly sailed on to, I think it was Holland or Scandinavia somewhere, I discovered, oh, there's a second ship coming and your stuff might be on that one instead of the first one. So I had to wait about another month on top of that before anything arrived. And when it arrived, it was good and I liked it. And I was pleased, and I knew that I would have to wait until they'd finished the 6th Siege delivery, and then we'd get Darkest Dungeon Wave 2 delivery coming, and then hopefully Hell the Last Saga, in that order. That was the original plan they laid out at one point. Now, they also promised that those of us who paid the extra shipping charges for Wave 1 would not need to pay any additional shipping charges for Wave 2. So as I said, about 2 weeks ago, they put out this update, where they told us all that, I'm skipping through this one, they told us all that we would all have to pay for the Wave 2 shipping update, and that was not nice. A lot of people were angry. They also took down the pinned comment stating that those of us who'd paid for Wave 1 extra shipping wouldn't have to pay for Wave 2. Now, the King of Average, whose YouTube channel is great, by the way, was already covering this, and he pointed out, well, he'd done some research, asked a lot of people what was going on, and he had an insider tell, well, we were at one point told, unofficially, so he was able to let us know unofficially that those of us who paid the extra Wave 1 shipping charge would have that amount deducted from the Wave 2 shipping charge. And that was like $26 for everything. And that $26 shipping charge for Wave 1 included shipping prices for Wave 2 items that have not yet been delivered. Just let that sink in for a moment. Now, obviously those prices may have increased. In the meantime, Mythic Games has kind of been going down the pan, circling the plug hole as it were. They're not in a great state financially. They've got to the point where they're basically running out of money. They've sacked all the creative people who are making things, and they're just keeping people on who are doing sort of delivery and logistics basically at this point. I think they might almost be being run by an asset management company, as in they're practically on the brink of going bankrupt, possibly. It's that bad. I just don't know the full details. However, they've listed here that Wave 2 printing will begin as soon as the factory finishes printing the 6th Siege board game. This is all great, right? And in this update, they let us know that they would let us know nearer the time what the charges for Wave 2 delivery would be. Week of October 2. Contributions open. I originally misread that as the second week of October, but I realised it was the week of October the 2nd. We're now on the 6th, so that was 4 days ago on Monday. And they want everyone to pay up by the last day of October. And then in November, the factories will start making stuff and get it ready to send it to us. Let's now go and look at the actual update they put out last night. I became aware of this update shortly before my regular Thursday night role-playing game, and I had to leave my game earlier than usual, so as not to take out my frustration on the other players at this update. So I'm going to go through this present update and these pieces of supporting information to a certain degree of detail, right? I'll go through this one in quite a lot of detail, and I will offer some thoughts, some very personal thoughts. So for the last 2 weeks, I have been saving my money in anticipation of a rather large charge from Mythic Games. I scrimped a bit on food shopping and other things, saving money up, because I anticipated a large charge. when the charge finally came, as mentioned in this update, I found it somewhat larger than expected, and everyone has different circumstances, right? You might just decide, I don't want to pay that. Lots of people have been asking Mythic Games for refunds for various projects they were running, and Mythic Games are currently about 15 months behind on the refund requests, by which I mean they're working through them in order as quickly as they can, or so they say, and it takes a long time, and people are sitting around wondering, what about my refund request I made 4 months ago? Well, mate, there's people who've been waiting longer than you, you know. At this point, making a refund request seems like a bad idea. These numbers are high, and I strongly suspect that every single refund request that has been made for any one of their campaigns has increased the size of these numbers because the money they've had to give back has reduced their ability to deliver upon their promises. I also suspect there are other matters that add to this, but let's read on, shall we? So, hello, Torchbearers. As we promised you, we're happy to tell you that we're diving into Wave 2 of Darkest Dungeon. This new wave contains not only the English expansions from Wave 1, but also the full range in the various languages. Oh, that's something else I wanted to say, right? The people who didn't pay the extra contributions for Wave 1 never got their stuff. And mysteriously, Mythic Games started selling lots of extra spare copies on their website, often at 50% off. And one of the sales announcement emails literally started with, "It's not a purchase, it's an investment." They were practically telling us to buy the stuff half price and put it on eBay. That is not good. It's insulting to the backers, especially the backers who aren't getting their stuff. Don't feel particularly happy about it. So this whole situation feels very poisonous. Let's get back to this update, shall we? As we promised you, we're happy to tell you that we're diving into Wave 2 of Darkest Dungeon. This new wave contains not only the missing English expansions from Wave 1, but also the full range of the various languages offered. So what they mean there is the Wave 2 English expansions that were always going to be Wave 2 and didn't come with Wave 1, and then the foreign language versions of everything, right? We're ready to launch the production process for Wave 2, i.e. the exchanges with the printer leading up to the physical printing, and we're going to give you a full update here. Emphasis on the words full update here. We will find a little bit further down this update that it's not quite as full as it could have been. Our last update, announcing the imminent opening of contributions for this wave, was meant to inform you and provide dates, but it lacked specifics, leading to several valid questions. It's also worth pointing out that Red Hook Games, who makes Darkest Dungeon, the computer game, only found out about this situation a few hours before update 125 was published, as in they only found out about it just before the backers, so they were kept in the dark. They've said they're looking into it, but we haven't heard anything else from them since. So they said they're basically contacting Mythic Games and asking, what's going on here? We don't understand. Could you let us know what's going on? Sorry, the current state of Darkest Dungeon and Mythic Games. Wave 1 of Darkest Dungeon has been shipped at the end of 2022 and beginning of 2023, and has been very well received. Many of those who played the core set and the Crimson Court expansion are waiting to play other expansions to get the full experience. This is very true. I have held off for now because I wanted to paint a few of the miniatures first, and I've been painting miniatures for other games, so I haven't given it a full try yet myself. Darkest Dungeon has 5 expansions, plus a special PvP mode expansion offered as a stretch goal, that offer massive combinations of locations, heroes and monsters. No 2 of your campaigns leading up to the Darkest Dungeon will be the same, and you won't exhaust its content for years. Especially if you have to wait years and years and years and years for it to arrive. As for backers in other language, it's finally their chance to immerse themselves in this unique game that captures the dark, sinister and epic feel of the computer game. Wave 2 is, as you know, ready to enter production, but we used the extra time to thoroughly check the files and make any final corrections. This was done not only for the English version, but also for the localized translations. In addition, we're happy to include a small printed bonus in this wave, previously offered as a print and play during Wave 1, the Master Weber mini-expansion. A new boss featuring a spider figure from the core box, complete with all cards and associated rules. Read about the Master Weber in this update, which is, I believe, this one. So previously this was going to be a little print and play expansion using an existing miniature from the game. That was like a little thank you for... It was like a compensation for putting up with the extra ransom demand. Let's just call it a ransom demand, okay? And then we'll close that tab. I'm not reading that one in great detail, but apparently now they're going to print out the cards and stuff that would have been in this expansion instead of us having to play with a PDF. Rationale for the contribution request. As previously discussed, the combined crisis of the coronavirus and the war in Ukraine, which we did not foresee, and the effects of which are still being felt, have changed the global context. Where was this previously discussed? I had a quick look, just a quick cursory glance, mind you, not a full-on search, and I could not find any discussion of this anywhere in the updates of this campaign related to additional charges for shipping. It is entirely possible they brought this up in updates on the Rainbow Six Siege campaign, which I have not backed and don't have an easy link to. I'd have to, scroll all the way up to the top of the page, click on their profile, 13 created, go to this. I'd need to know this project exists. I'd need to go there, and I'd need to look through all the updates and find where they have possibly brought this up. Essentially, I do not have this information, right? This feels a bit weak. It feels like they're claiming they've said something that they haven't. However, before we go on with that, it's worth pointing out that France have pledged a lot of military and financial support to the Ukraine to help them work their way through this situation. Not only have they provided, military equipment, they've provided financial equipment. In particular, France has sent Ukraine 2 mobile DNA laboratories to strengthen Ukraine's capacity to prosecute war crimes. This assistance will continue to grow. Apparently, a lot of French companies gathered together and all made financial contributions to help the people of Ukraine. As in, there's like an agreement, every company in France is going to do this, right? It's something that you have to look to find, and if you're an international backer who doesn't really necessarily know what the French have done, it would be very easy to see this as an excuse. It could still be an excuse. This here feels like a weak excuse, but there may be some reasons behind it that make it a little bit more genuine. Prices have skyrocketed in all sectors, making our original estimates of the Kickstarter campaign obsolete. This project would not be proposed today at such a low price, more likely double or triple the original offer. The price of shipping containers has increased, but it has kind of plateaued off and is starting to stabilize. That's in the next paragraph, right. We've already mentioned that cost increases 50 to 100% on paper, hourly rates in China, energy, plastics, and raw materials. You can review an update detailing this situation and cost evaluation here. If we open this, it's just the original update where they said, hey, we're going to have to ask for some money for... This is just detailing the Wave 1 additional shipping charges, right? Which is this update, which I can now close. Although container prices have dropped, the other costs haven't. In particular, the cost of last mile shipping that has never been higher. We unfortunately had to ask for combinations on both waves of Darkest Dungeon, and we're sorry for that. Without this, we wouldn't have been able to deliver Wave 1. This situation is similar to another project, Six Siege, which is currently in print thanks to the support of our backers who have accepted to pay the contribution enabling the game to be manufactured. I think you'll find it's called a ransom, and you know it. I'm going to have fun with the thumbnail for this one. I'm thinking brigands with knives threatening a bunch of traumatized heroes. That ought to do it, right? With like the big Mythic Games logo across the top. That should be good, right? Initial contribution request option. This is where the massive numbers start coming in and it starts to feel like an insult. Given the number of items in Wave 2, we've analysed the individual... Oh, yeah, I forgot to say, King of Average said that one guy he'd talked to knew that in the previous update when they said we're analysing all the costs and we'll let you know the figures when we can, he had an insider tell him that they already had all these figures and they were holding off until just before they opened the Pledge Manager before announcing anything to reduce the amount of upset, you know, from backers. Not necessarily the wisest choice. Now, this was due to open on the week of the 2nd. It didn't open on the 2nd, it didn't open on the 3rd, it didn't open on the 4th, it opened very late in the evening on the 5th. People in the comments section have suspected that because because Red Hook were looking into this, this may have delayed the launch of the Pledge Manager. So, initial contribution request option. Given the number of items in Wave 2, we've analysed the individual additional costs for each item so that everyone could calculate their contribution based on their own order. Considering all the costs and knowing that we won't be able to absorb some of the extra costs from Wave 2 as we did for Wave 1, here is... Yeah, and knowing how many refund requests they've got eating into their ability to deliver all this stuff. Just thought I'd add that, you know. Here is the initial contribution breakdown, excluding last mile postage. See below. Oh, so there's more on top of this that we calculated with our printer. Core set, $44. I presume these are American dollars. Crimson Court, $34. Musketeer, $33. The Heirloom Chest, $9. The Dark Tapestry, $10. The Darkest Organizer, $5. These were all delivered in Wave 1 for those of us who were lucky enough to receive Wave 1. Darkest Heroes, $10. Darkest Compendium, $8. Colour of Madness, $30. The Cove, $30. The Warrens, $30. The Wield, $30. These prices, calculated on the basis for an individualised production of each package per product per pledge, seemed very high to us. So here's the thing with Kickstarter. This is all about packaging, right? If they have to send each of these things separately, these are the costs they see. So if I only had the Darkest Heroes, $10, right? If I had a big bundle including everything, so no one has to spend time sorting through things, making sure they put the right things in the box, then it generally costs less. But obviously the quotes they were given were for each of these packaged individually and sent individually as separate orders. These prices, calculated on the basis of an individualised production of each product per language, seemed very high to us. Faced with this reality, we considered several alternative options, such as sending the language files in PDF format only, or even renouncing the request for a contribution and therefore not delivering, which would have been Mythic Games' first delivery failure. Well, some of us have been waiting about 3 years for Hell the Last Saga, let's put it that way, right? Something we can't accept, nor you. Fortunately, we found what we hope to be an acceptable option that significantly reduces your contribution. The bard here is now playing and the crowd looks really depressed. Just saying. Revised contribution request. The language pack. This is where foreign language backers may get well and truly shafted over, and a lot of foreign language backers are very upset about this. Disturbingly, I am disgustingly monolingual, but I fully support the feelings and emotions of international language backers who want to be able to read and understand things in a language they are fluent in, rather than having to sit there. It could be a bit like English as she is spake, which was the first English to Spanish dictionary ever produced. It was about 400 years ago now. It was written by a Spaniard who didn't speak a word of English, and he wrote the English to Spanish dictionary with the aid of a Spanish to French dictionary and a French to English dictionary, despite the fact that he didn't speak a word of French either. The resulting book was hilariously inept when it came to actual English language, but it was the case of one of the very first international multi-language translation dictionaries, and also probably the worst. So, here is the best option we found in terms of optimizing the extra manufacturing cost. We will produce the entire product line, core set and all expansions in English. Cap bold. Big emphasis there. This increases the global quantities printed per item, resulting in economies of scale and significant reduction of printing costs. In other words, all the backers who backed for a non-English version of the game will receive an English language version of the game. Now, many of the game components do not have words on them but have symbols, and so as such are pretty good for multiple languages already. It's more things like the rulebook that will need actual linguistic tinkering. For foreign versions, we'll create a language pack per language, allowing you to replace all rulebooks, cards, and tiles, etc. in your native language. In the end, after a few minor manipulations, you'll have a complete game in your language. Wait a minute. So they're going to print everything in the same language. Then they're going to create a bunch of replacement items in a separate language, creating duplicate items, increasing their manufacturing costs. But wait, there's a catch. In the end, after a few minor manipulations, you'll have a complete game in your language. There is a catch, which is coming just down here. The catch being that if enough people don't back for a language, that language doesn't get produced. Here's the new cost per item in this situation. Core set from $44 down to $29. Crimson Court, $34 down to $21. Musketeer, $3, excluding Kickstarter backers who got it as a free gift and won't be asked for this $3 contribution. So wait. Ah yes, those of us who backed the project early or weren't late backers got the Musketeer as a freebie. This for a moment made me think, wait, are they actually going to charge us shipping for Wave 1 items even though we've already received them to help pay for the Wave 2 items? And say, well, you got these already, added value, no. This is not saying that the people who already receive things have to pay for them again, I think. Heirloom Chest, $9. Dark Tapestry, $10. Darkest Organizer, $5. Darkest Heroes, $10. So these remain unchanged. Darkest Compendium, $8. Greater Protection from Darkness, $5. Lesser Protection from Darkness, $3. Color of Madness, the Cove, the Warrens, and the Weald, all from $30 down to $18. For example, the new total for a Dungeon Pledge is $29, $15 less than the first option. For a Crimson Pledge, it is $50, $28 less. For an Ancestral Pledge, it is $122 instead of $198. For the Ancestral Pledge and Ancestral Pledge Bundle, ill is more... Okay, I'm going to presume that's a T, or this is a French word. It is more than $80 less than the first solution. So il, I-L, is a French word for he. If they're French, it is a gendered language, so they could be saying that the amount we are paying, which is apparently male, is more than $80 less, or just it, and that's a typo. I think I'll lean towards it, but interesting to see. Of course, we understand that it is never good news to pay an extra fee. I'm not sure. Are they robbers or pirates? Of course, we understand that it is never good news to pay an extra fee, but we feel that with the language pack, the extra cost has been kept to a minimum, and that it will allow a minimum number of backers to complete their order and get their board game in their language with all the missing expansions. Shipping will be added on top. Wait. This wasn't for shipping? This whole lot? This is just for manufacturing then? Or I had a feeling this was for manufacturing and shipping. Let's get back to this mysterious paragraph, shall we? Shipping will be added on top and is calculated separately for each pledge, depending... I think what they mean is that these shipping costs will be added on top of our current pledge amount and are calculated separately for each pledge. For instance, if I didn't get these things, I don't pay for these things. I only pay for these things. Well, actually, given what I got from Wave 1, I only pay for those things, right? So this is a shockingly large amount. This may be an opportunity for people who missed out on Wave 1 shipping to get their stuff, finally, right? But the fact they've only given us about 3 weeks to do it all is a bit of a kick in the guts. So, shipping will be added on top and is calculated separately for each pledge depending on the geographic location to be delivered. We know that you have already paid postage fees during the Pledge Manager, but even including them in the contribution we received, these fees do not cover the total additional costs and have only allowed us to reduce the number for this second contribution. And here's the Necromancer and all his minions coming for us, like, you will never see this before you die unless you pay the extra money. What does this mean for Wave 1 backers? Non-English speaking backers who didn't pay any contribution knew they would have to pay it when Wave 2 production would start. But for English speaking backers who have already made a contribution, we said a year ago that it would include the Wave 2 contribution. So why do we need to ask them for a top-up? What's changed? First of all, it's important to point out that when we asked for the shipping contribution, we had absolutely no intention of asking for more from those who had already paid. We certainly weren't asking for the difference in amount needed to cover all the extra costs we had detailed to make this delivery possible. Far from it, because it seemed too enormous and we wanted to ask as little as possible of our backers. Apparently Red Hook actually stepped in and covered some of this, which is good for them, I'd say. That is why Wave 1 only asked for help with the shipping change. So in order to make up for these additional costs, there's those words, additional costs again, with little explanation, we had to look for all kinds of solutions. We made our calculations based on the income we could continue to generate to make up the shortfall, whether it was for game sales on our site, of which there were many, often at reduced costs. Sales of our intellectual properties, yes, they did sell off a number of their intellectual property campaigns, and so on. In addition, we reorganized and reduced a large part of the company's staff in order to significantly reduce the company's operating costs. They sacked anyone creative who was making things, and they kept on people who do product delivery, basically. Which means that after all this, if they do actually have enough funds to continue functioning as a company, they're not going to have anyone with any sort of creative vision or anything. At this point, if they manage to deliver all this stuff, they'd be better off just closing down, going out of business, maybe starting a separate company. Who knows? We thought that these measures would help us get through the crisis, and that we could continue. If not normal business, at least a minimum income to support normal operations and a margin to offset price increases. Unfortunately, our predictions were not correct. Admittedly, the current inflationary crisis is not helping, and the board game market is not as dynamic as it used to be. The facts are simple. The contribution we received in 2022 does not fully cover What is needed for this second wave? We're sorry for that. I bet they are. I bet they're sorry for a whole lot of this, although they often seem pretty brazen in their demands as well. However, the financial part already paid during the first contribution will be deducted from the new contribution request now for Wave 2. Thus, only the additional costs and not the total cost will be requested from the backers who have already contributed to Wave 1. Here's the specific contribution for backers who have received Wave 1. Darkest Heroes goes from $10 down to $7 because they probably charged us $3 for it previously. Darkest Compendium, $8 down to $5. Color of Madness, $18 down to $13. The Cove, $18 down to $13. Warrens and Wield, also $18 down to $13. For example, if you have an Ancestral Pledge, Gameplay All-In, yep, unfortunately I do, you'll be paying $20 less now and $26 left for Ancestral Pledge and Bundle and Premium All-In. Yeah, I think I actually did go all-in on this one. But it's still... So, looking at these prices up here, like, I literally wouldn't be paying for anything above this, and all of these would be at reduced prices. So, you know, it's starting to feel a little bit better. But for people who are left looking at the whole lot and going, oh dear goodness, what am I going to do with that? It does feel rather nasty. MOQ, which is not explained until further down, and contribution instructions. Instructions now. Instructions which must be obeyed at all costs. Of course, the participation of as many backers as possible is essential to reach the minimum print run asked by our manufacturing partners, which is later explained to be minimum order quantity. Meaning, what they're trying to do is guilt trip you here, saying, if enough of you don't pay this, we won't be able to send it to any of you. You wouldn't want that, would you? That would be bad. Ooh, now give us all your money. Right? It's, yeah. Kind of seeing through the curtain here a little bit, you know. The proposed solution of printing only in English should make it easy to reach this minimum print run. However, this also means that a minimum order quantity will be required for each language pack. We'll keep you updated on the contribution level during the contribution period. There are numerous backers in the comments section of both this update and the campaign as a whole, pointing out that there probably aren't enough backers for their language to get a language translation pack for their language. And complaining about that. And some of them are asking for refunds and going on the massive 15-month queue of people waiting for refunds, which will then increase the amount of money Red Hook needs, which then means when they come to try and deliver their next project, they'll be asking even more from us. Just saying. Starting tomorrow, Friday afternoon, Friday morning in the United States, you'll receive 2 emails. The first is about creating your private account on our secure portal. The link in the email will take you directly to the web portal where you can set your password. The second email will inform you of your pledge level and the amount of your contribution. You have until the 31st of October to pay your contribution. Yes, this really is a Halloween terror. A nightmare. So, they are no longer doing this through GameFound. They're doing this on their own, allegedly secure web portal, which means either GameFound no longer wants to have anything to do with them as a payment and processing manager, or they don't want to give any money to GameFound. But it does give the feeling of, guys, look, no one will work with us. Can you please just give us your money on our own unaccountable web shop donation thingy, and then we can just, like, so if I was being really cynical, they could just run off with all the money and say, oh yeah, we like lost the records of who paid us, so guys, we can't do any of this. You know, it's like, oh, it could be a trouble. The following points need to be considered. For the language packs, we need a mock. They finally explain that this stands for minimum order quantity, which would have been helpful to explain up here when they first mentioned the abbreviation. of 1,000 copies per pack. If we do not reach for MOC, minimum order quantity, for a language pack, we will ship the items in English, as well as PDF print and play files in the translated language. Which means if you backed this in a foreign language and not a lot of people from your country backed it, or countries that speak your language, because some languages are very international. I mean, take Spanish and Portuguese, for example. They speak Portuguese in Brazil, although they speak Brazilian Portuguese, not Portuguese. But lots of places speak Spanish, and lots of places speak French. There's lots of African countries that speak French, right? But if not enough people are backed in your language, you'd better have a printer and a computer with a big enough hard drive to store the stuff so you can print it. We need a minimum commitment to start printing, and we will keep you informed of this commitment level, through updates during the 20-day contribution period, which means during the next 3 weeks of the daylight robbery gateway being open, they will be producing daily updates going, guys, so many of you have given us money and that's really great, but so many more of you haven't, and we really need you to do it too, or we won't be able to send it to anyone, including the people who already paid. Could you please just pay us loads of money so we can sort this problem out? I think this is what we call emotional blackmail. I don't think this applies to just the foreign language packs. I think this applies to the whole project. If we do not reach the required quantity level, we commit to refunding immediately all Wave 2 contributors. So they want us all to pay them money on the promise they'll give our money back at the end of the month if not enough other people have paid. This is a massive confidence. It's not. Is it a confidence trick? No, it's like it's trying to encourage us to be confident, to confidently believe that other people are backing, and they may indeed publish these daily updates going, look, 4% of you have paid. Let's see if we can make it to 5.2% tomorrow. This could be encouraging or incredibly disheartening, and it could turn a lot of people off to see daily updates barraging them with the same information time and time again. We're trying to weigh you down, people. Look, I haven't fully decided yet if I want to pay this or not. We all have different financial situations, and I'm not going to encourage any of you to pay. I'm not going to encourage any of you to not pay, but there is a link further down to what's here. And there's something I want to bring up as I keep going, right? The contribution amounts per item have been calculated as accurately as possible. They only cover the funds necessary to print Wave 2 of Darkest Dungeon. The funds received for this contribution will be used entirely and exclusively for the printing of Wave 2 of Darkest Dungeon. I find this very hard to believe. Now, there have been a lot of times with their struggling projects recently when people have asked, is money from this project going to another project? Because they were doing that previously, and they've said, look, no, guys, no, we've got to keep this money separate because we can't get into that whole juggling money between projects thing, because that's what got us into this trouble in the first place. But there's a reason why. I mean, they've got like increased cost of living, they got wages, they got all sorts of things. If this is being used exclusively for the printing of Wave 2, what about the shipping costs for Wave 2? Are they going to ask us for those as well? I think this isn't entirely clear, and they could handle that a little bit better. At the end of the fundraising period, if we have reached the minimum commitment, we will begin production immediately. Based on estimates from our printing and logistics partners, Wave 2 will be printed between December and January. Based on the same estimates, the first shipments will be expected to begin from April to May. So, at the end of the fundraising period, on the 31st of October, So, starting on the 1st of November, they will immediately begin printing sometime between December and January. What they mean to say is that it'll go on the production queue right after Rainbow Six Siege, which will take until sometime in December and January to finish producing, and then this will go into production. So this little bit conflicting, just saying. If there are any changes to this tentative schedule, you will be notified immediately. I hate the word schedule because I can never remember if it's schedule or schedule. I know Americans say it the wrong way and we say it the other way, and I can never remember which is which, so I tend to avoid using the word as much as possible. I think it's schedule. It's the shed word, which I hate. Shed. Bit of a tongue twister. Anyway, if you do not wish to or cannot pay, you will not receive your game at the time of delivery. Guilt. Trying to put the guilt on you when it should be on them for making a mess of this in the first place. We remain open to the possibility of delivering to you depending on price developments in the future, although it is highly unlikely that prices will drop significantly in the coming months. This is true, but I could be poor now and less poor later. Right? I might not have spent the last 2 weeks, scrimping and saving to make sure I'd have money left for this. And I get paid 3 out of every 4 weeks. On the 4th week, I don't get paid, right? So I get one payment every 2 weeks, and I get the other payment every 4 weeks. So every 4 weeks, I get a week when I have no money coming in. If that had led to a situation where I was very low on funds, and this had hit me in the middle of that, and had been open for a shorter window of opportunity, let's just say, hang on. So next week I don't get money. 2 weeks after that I do get money, and then the pledge manager will close roughly in the middle of that. So it should close on a week when I have money coming in. So I, as a poor person, have to balance my bank balance based on when I can afford to pay this, when I have enough money in the bank, and if I can afford to spend that money in the bank, right? Depending on when your paycheck comes, this could be a major inconvenience for you as well, right? Also, since this is the last printing we will do for the game, any later requests for it made after the contribution period will be subject to availability at that time, and must include payment for the contribution required to print the game or desired expansion. So essentially, they're saying they may have some leftover stock, which might then be available, and then you'll have to pay the same fees you would have now. Or they're saying, we'll check if the factory bothered to keep the files, and if they're willing to make a very single production run, one copy thing for you at an increased. So basically really expensive, right? So they're saying, pay now, it ain't going to get any cheaper. It will only get more expensive. Once again, we're sorry to have to ask for this contribution, but we hope you understand that we're doing this transparently to offset new production costs and with the sole purpose of being able to bring you this extraordinary game. At this point, it's becoming extraordinarily expensive, but still. Refund requests. We will continue to issue refunds where possible. These refunds will be made in the chronological order of requests received by emailing our assistance department at support@mythicgames.net. That's not an @ symbol, it's the around symbol. I learned this at school. And according to a capped amount that is reviewed monthly. This means that the wait can be unfortunately very long. Yes, for many people, a year, quite probably. Furthermore, these refunds are only possible as long as they do not affect the delivery of ongoing projects. I would hypothesize that every single refund request is affecting the delivery of ongoing projects, and the refunds which have not been processed yet have all been looked at and have been factored into the increased prices listed above. So I would strongly suggest that these prices blatantly include the refund request amount split across all remaining backers, with an estimate based on how many more are likely to place a refund request now that they've read this update, and hoping that not too many do. Please note that requests are tracked on the date your emails are sent, even if you have not received a response from our support team. I also suspect that all of the refund requests they have been delivering are going to affect the delivery of Hell the Last Saga. It is my strong belief that that is the case. Frequently asked questions. We know you'll probably have many questions. Yes, indeed. Many of us have many questions. So, we've prepared an FAQ, frequently asked questions. Please feel free to contact us by email or in the comments. The most frequently asked questions have been added to this list as they arise. And it says, click on the image to access the FAQ. This link below the image will also access it, as will this link up here. And here it is, and I'd like to skim through this to get to at least one point, right, that made me laugh when I saw it. A final word. Before we close, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to read this long message, and once again thank all the backers who have supported us and agreed to contribute. We know these are difficult times for everyone, with price increases everywhere. We know you've already invested a lot in this game. We know this move will be unpopular, but it's what has allowed us to deliver, and we haven't given up thanks to your critical but concrete support. I would suggest, with the sheer vocal amount of people in the comments section clamouring about their refund requests, the support might not be quite as concrete as they're making out, even if it's a vocal minority. But the majority of the comments section is people talking about refund requests, and has been for about a year now. It's because of you that we were able to finish, print and ship these extraordinary projects around the world, despite the unforeseen difficulties we faced. Over 80% of you contributed to Darkest Dungeon Wave 1 and received your games. Well, that's reassuring to know, given that 80 or 90% of the comment section has been people demanding refunds. Almost as many of you contributed to 6 Siege, despite a much higher contribution rate. I've heard it was an incredibly high contribution rate, and people looked at it and went, oh god, Mythic Games are at it again, they're asking for more money, what are we going to do, guys? Our greatest reward in delivering Wave 1 was seeing the rave reviews of the gameplay, the fun and intensity people felt playing the Darkest Dungeon board game, the incredible photos of the miniatures painted by so many enthusiasts. I really would like to paint mine. Maybe that'll cheer me up and make me feel in a better mood about this project. We can't wait to send you this fantastic game. Apparently they can wait until around April to May next year. We can't wait to send you this fantastic game and the missing expansions, and to see your reactions when you get your hands on them. It's sure to become a classic in your collection, and one you'll be proud to own. The Mythic Team. And then we get to the French language version of the update. So let's finally go look at the frequently asked questions. There's a lot here. A lot of it in chunky sections. All you need to know about Wave 1 and Wave 2. How's delivery going to be organised? What's in Wave 1? What's in Wave 2? What's my contribution for Wave 2? All the answers are in this update. Blank space. Are you the only publisher to ask for a contribution? Unfortunately, we're not the only publisher affected by cost increases. Asking for a contribution is not an easy decision to make, and we don't take it lightly. Some publishers, like us, have asked for contributions in various forms. For example, Shadowborn Games for Oathsworn. Actually, Shadowborn Games handled it very well. And they said, look guys, we're sorry about this. If you pay this, we'll give you a lifetime 15% discount on any future purchases with us and future projects we do and things like that, right? They were like, hey, look, here's a really nice, I can't remember if it was 10% or 15%, but it was a meaningful reward, right? It was like, hey, to make it up to you, Flyos Games for Vampire the Masquerade chapters, Pangaea Games for Forests of Pangaea, Project L on GameFound, and many others. Other publishers have filed for bankruptcy and ceased trading without delivering to backers, which is obviously the worst possible situation that all publishers want to avoid. Finally, some companies have absorbed these additional costs from their cash flow, often thanks to business models that differ from ours, which is based on Kickstarter alone, notably integrating retail sales. Note that Mythic Games has in the past absorbed substantial surcharges for the delivery of games already subject to unforeseen price increases. Solomon Kane, Steam Watchers, Joan of Arc 1.5, Super Fantasy Brawl Round 2. Yes, all of these times they ran into money troubles. I'm not saying they asked backers for money on these times, but all of these times they ran into money troubles because of the way they had run their previous campaigns. What's the process of participating in the contribution of request? Now, where are we? How can you guarantee that Darkest Dungeon will be delivered? And they're like, well, if we meet the minimum ordered quantity, it will be. You know. Now, where are we? If I don't want to pay the contribution, can I have my pledge refunded? It's down here somewhere. Right? There was a question about this affecting other projects, and it mentioned other projects, and I couldn't help but laugh because of what they actually wrote in the answer. I want to find it, see if I can find it quickly. I'll know it, I should know it when I see it, because of something at the end of the answer. I think it was towards the end. Oh, it goes further down the page. That would explain why I haven't seen it yet. Me, sleepyhead, only had a few hours sleep, not noticing that there was a lot of gap here at the bottom of the bar. So the language translation packs. All you need to know about Mythic Games. This is right. Will Darkest Dungeon be sold in retail? We have no intention of producing this game for retail. Suffice it to say that the size of this product does not allow to do so. I presume does not allow us to do so. Nevertheless, we have some limited operations during which we destocked a few pieces to small resellers, but this remains marginal. In other words, when they were for 3 or 4 months in a row selling off copies to eBay bastards. You know the ones. You know, the ones selling Kingdom Death stuff at 2 or 3 times what they paid for it. Yeah, those eBay bastards. The ones who create massive queues at my local post office with their 6 or 7 parcels where the rest of us are just there to, like, try and buy a box of stamps or something, you know. Or book of stamps, rather. Have you used Darkest Dungeon funds for other projects? No. All funds raised for Darkest Dungeon were spent on this project alone. I don't believe this, but I'll take their word for it for now, you know. Yeah. Alright, guys, I'll believe you. Thousands wouldn't, but I'll believe you. Is a common English sarcastic phrase. We'll provide details on the expenses related to this project shortly. I'm not sure how detailed that will be. Are the clearance sales we can see on your website a sign that you'll soon be going out of business? The clearance sales have only been applied to 3 products so far. Steam Watchers, Enchanters and Super Fantasy Brawl. That's bollocks. They've been doing stock clearance sales of Darkest Dungeon for months. These 3 intellectual properties have been sold to fellow publishers, and we were obliged to sell our last stocks. We also did a few destocking operations with small retailers on Darkest Dungeon, but it was very limited quantities. If it was very limited quantities, why was it going on for about 5 months? The impression we were given is that there were hundreds of copies being sold off, and we all had to buy them now, get them while they're hot. If there were like just 20 or 30 copies sitting around and they were desperately trying to sell them off, like begging for money for months, that would put a whole different slant on it. But the impression they gave in the sales announcement emails was not like that, right? Mythic Games has no intention of going out of business. And yet, after the state of all their projects so far, their reputation is in such a bad state, I'm not sure they could possibly stay in business for very long. Why is Mythic Games on the link of bankruptcy? This down here is what made me laugh. What I just highlighted there briefly. No, we understand certain fears, but we'd like to set the record straight. For almost a year now, we've been making managerial and financial decisions that have enabled the company to continue its activities on a much smaller scale than before. To date, we have still delivered our games, 10 projects delivered. Get ready to laugh, guys. Get ready to laugh. And intend to continue doing so on Sixth Siege, Hell, Rise of the Necromancers, Monsterpocalypse, and Anastir. We are aware of the delays on certain projects and apologise again for this situation, but we intend to finalise all these projects one by one. Right, so the Anastir project, and you notice every opportunity they get on this page is a finalise your pledge button to take us to their web portal to give them money. There's greed and money all over this page. So a lot of people theorised that Anastir only existed to fund the previous 2 projects before it, and that it would never get delivered at all. I came very close to backing Anastir. I remember when Anastir was a very, very small miniature range of just 3 miniatures. There was a man barbarian, a woman barbarian, and a troll. And each of the barbarians had a version on a foot on a horse, and I'm not even sure the man existed. I know the troll existed. I have the woman, and she's, I've got the version on foot and the version on a horse upstairs. Haven't got round to painting her yet. Been there for many years. They were sold by Cool Mini or Not, of all things. So the range never seemed to develop any further. And then years later, when Mythic Games said, hey guys, we want to make an Anastir game, and it's going to use the Anastir miniature line and expand on it. Here's loads of sculpts. Here's lots of artwork by guys who did artwork for Pathfinder First Edition, and I think a lot of Wayne England artwork. In particular, he did a lot of Pathfinder First Edition artwork, right? But the overall feeling over the last few years is that the Anastir project, dead as a dodo, unlikely to deliver. When they previously said that they were going to deliver Darkest Dungeon Wave 1, Sixth Siege, Darkest Dungeon Wave 2, and Hell, there was no mention of Rise of the Necromancers, Monsterpocalypse, or Anastir, and those were all presumed to be dead and dead. The fact that they now claim that they are going to deliver all these as well, with their heavily reduced capacity and finances, is laughable. I did laugh long and hard when I read that even they believed they would even be able to deliver Anastir. I would be greatly pleased if they could. I wish I could have got a copy of Anastir. Unfortunately, it arrived at a time when I didn't have enough money to back it. And I talked to myself and I said, look, Raph, come on. You backed their Hell, the last Saga campaign. You backed their Darkest Dungeon campaign. You haven't received a single thing from any of those yet. Wave 1 of Darkest Dungeon hadn't been delivered at that point, and I thought, okay, look, I'm starting to see people saying, look, these guys aren't delivering, and complaining. And, maybe I should just hold off a bit. Save my money. I can barely afford this at the moment as it is. I don't need the aggro, right? I don't need the stress, don't need the hassle. So, they think they're going to be able to deliver Anastir. Have a good chuckle at that one. I certainly did. Right. So here we have it. The Mythic Games ransom demand has dropped. It's big, it's heavy. They've left us a very narrow time frame to pay it. And there will be daily pressure applied to encourage us all to pay up like good little plebs. Now, I have mixed feelings. Haven't decided if I'm going to pay this one yet. The knowledge that the payments for Wave 1 items, I'm not going to have to pay for them again, and the Wave 2 items will be reduced, is encouraging. $122, it's foreign money, it's American money, it's about 110, maybe 115 pounds. It's a lot, right? But the fact that I'd actually be paying a lot less than that Let me just... History... it's going to be one of these, isn't it? There we go. So in theory, I am in a better situation than many of the rest of you, having paid for Wave 1. So I'm only looking at 7, 12, 25, plus 39 would be $64 American money, right? So about 55 to 60 pounds. It suddenly feels a lot more reasonable than having to pay like 115, 120 quid, right? It's like half the amount. However, for all those people who didn't pay anything for Wave 1 and being expected to pay a lot more for Wave 2, I really feel for you guys, you know. So don't feel like I'm pressuring you to pay up for any of this stuff. Don't feel like I'm saying, hey, stuff it, you know, don't pay them a penny, right? They don't deserve anything. It's a really tough situation we've been placed in, because essentially they're saying, you know, pay up or you don't get your stuff. And we can't exactly send a bunch of heroes in there to kick down their doors, beat them all up and go, right now, just fucking do it, you know. Would be very nice if we could, obviously. There has been talk in the comments section of some people trying to bring a court case against these guys. It's like, look, guys, come on. It's a tricky situation, as I said, because every refund request makes it harder for them to deliver stuff to anyone else and collapse. But then, looking at it the other way, you're looking at a sunk cost fallacy. You're going, oh god, man, I've spent so much money on this already. It's just a little bit more, you know, it's just like another quarter of what I paid originally or something, and you know. So you can just cut your losses and go, man, that's just too much for me. You know, that's enough. You know, final straw broke the camel's back. They're taking the fucking piss. Don't give them anything, right? I said there might be strong language in this video, and I'm surprised that I've actually kept it clean for the most part. So you can go, stuff it, just cut my losses and run. You can go, cut my losses and run and ask for a refund request, and hope that after they've processed all the other refund requests, they'll actually have anything left to give me back at all. Essentially, at this point, they're so far behind on refund requests that you might as well not bother making a refund request, at which point you could look at this and go, well, hey, do I want this? Am I going to pay for it? You know, am I going to not pay for it and see if I can somehow pay for it later at a higher price when I have more money, if I just don't have much money now? And if you can't afford whatever charges they're charging you, man, I feel for you. Yeah, that's a really horrible situation to be in. If you want to pay but can't pay, that's worse than being able to pay and choosing not to pay, right? So, yeah, hey, it's nasty, it's horrible. I'm going to go sort out a tasty thumbnail now with lots of Darkest Dungeon artwork and get this uploaded to YouTube so you can all enjoy it and go, these people at Mythic Games are being absolute, and we don't want to, well, whatever, right? It's, yeah, it's not nice, it's ugly, and I'd appreciate any thoughts you guys have down in the comments section below. Seriously, this is something that should be talked about. Now, admittedly, other channels have been covering this already. I've held off out of politeness and respect, but this massive Wave 2 demand was such a shock to me that I felt I had to speak about it. So there you go, guys. There's a look through the stuff and some of the information that may have been helpful about, like, the French companies donating money to the Ukrainian people. And, I mean, hey, you know, Ukraine was literally hit by a missile. Someone missiled a funeral in Ukraine, like yesterday or the day before. I mean, how evil do you have to be to attack people at a funeral for people who died in the war? It's just, it's nasty. I'm not calling the Russians evil, calling the person who launched from missile evil. And possibly the people who did call the order to do it. But on that note, I want to point out that I have not at any point called the people from Mythic Games evil. The monsters in the Darkest Dungeon are evil. Go get your heroes together, light some torches and beat them up. In the meantime, for now though, I'll say bye-bye. Yep, All the usual stuff's down below, like button, dislike button, unless you're playing the version of YouTube where it's been disabled, in which case, go grab the extension and re-enable the like button, dislike button so you can see how many dislikes there are, because honestly, it's not that hard. And, you know, comment section is there as well, feel free to use it. See you all next time, guys. Bye for now.